The journey back to our true origin. Every human being is born into a particular family, a specific country, a unique set of circumstances. We arrive in this world as if everything had already been arranged for us, our name, our body, our culture, even our roles. But have we ever truly paused to ask ourselves, where did I come from? But it's rarely the final word. Between these 2 points lies a human life, full of hopes, sufferings, questions, and endless seeking. We live as if we already know who we are. But sometimes, in the quietest moments, when the noise fades and distractions fall away, a deeper question rises: is this life just a fleeting dream? Is there something beyond birth and death? Since ancient times, the core question remains the same: what is the true nature of life? And perhaps, when all external explanations fall short, people begin to turn inward, toward the teachings of awakened beings. Among them, the Buddha. Buddhism doesn't offer answers based on blind faith. The Buddha didn't create a system of beliefs requiring you to accept heaven, hell, or reincarnation just because someone said so. He never asked anyone to believe in something they couldn't verify for themselves. Instead, his teachings invite us on a path of direct insight, an inner journey that begins right here and now, in this very breath, this very moment, in the unfolding reality of our body and mind. According to Buddhism, life isn't a fixed object, it's a flow, a constant stream of causes and conditions. This body, these emotions, these thoughts, they are not permanent entities, but momentary assemblies, always arising and passing. We don't truly come from somewhere as if we dropped out of the sky. Nor do we go somewhere in the way a soul might travel from one realm to another. Instead, we are part of a continuum, a current of consciousness shaped by karma, the consequences of intentional actions. From this view, death is not a terrifying end but a transition, a door into another opportunity for learning, for awakening, for transformation. If we haven't yet realized the truth of suffering and liberation, then life continues. But if we have awakened, if we've seen deeply that there is no fixed self moving through lifetimes, then all attachments dissolve. Death no longer holds fear because we understand it not as the end of life, but as the dissolving of form. Of course, this can't be grasped by mere intellectual reasoning. Words alone can't deliver such truth. In Buddhism, truth is not something to believe in, it's something to see for yourself. As the Buddha once said, "I only show the way, it is up to you to walk it." And the path begins in the simplest of ways, by turning inward, observing the body, the mind, the ceaseless arising and fading of all things within. When we truly look into ourselves, we see that everything we once identified as me, our name, our job, our social role, even our memories and emotions, is impermanent. Everything is moving, shifting, vanishing, like waves rising and falling on the ocean. And once we stop clinging to those waves, life becomes lighter. We are no longer afraid of loss, no longer bound by the past, no longer anxious about what's ahead. We simply live, present, open, and deeply connected. So perhaps the question, where did I come from, and where will I go, does not need a definitive philosophical answer. Sometimes, the question itself is a mirror, reflecting our confusion, our longing, our existential hunger. And in the moment we stop demanding answers and begin to rest in the mystery, something profound opens up. Not through beliefs, but through direct experience, through being fully here. What the Buddha offers is not a religion in the conventional sense, but an inner revolution, a radical awakening from the dream of ego, of birth and death, of me and mine. And once we begin to wake up, life and death lose their grip. They become commas in the vast story of existence. We no longer get swept away by the river of becoming, we begin to float with it. Aware, compassionate, and free. Birth and death are not the beginning or the end. In the profound view of Buddhism, birth is not a beginning, and death is not an end. These are merely markers on a continuous stream of existence, where there is no absolute self that is truly born or ultimately perishes. What we commonly refer to as I, this body, these memories, this personality, is just a temporary aggregation of physical elements and consciousness. When those elements dissolve, we call it death. When they come together again, we call it birth. But between birth and death, there is no fixed entity that moves from point A to point B. It's like a flame passed from one candle to another. That flame is not exactly the same as the previous one. But it's not entirely different either. It continues, not by carrying form, but by transferring energy. Death, in Buddhism, is understood in the same way as continuation. As a transformation of consciousness from one form into another, depending on the karmic force that has been accumulated. Therefore, the question, where did I come from, cannot be answered by pointing to a specific location. Nor can the question, where will I go after death, be answered by drawing a map. We come from our actions, our thoughts, speech, and intentions, that have been stored up not only in this present life, but through countless past existences. Consciousness carries the imprint of all that we have been. It has no clear beginning and no definitive end. In the teaching of dependent origination, the Buddha clearly explained, all phenomena arise due to conditions. Nothing exists independently, separate from the whole. What we call a life is simply the temporary convergence of various factors, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. When those conditions are present, life manifests. When they dissolve, form disappears, but energy, intention, and mental momentum do not vanish. They continue to reappear, like one wave fading while another rises from the same ocean. That's why, when seen with wisdom, death is no longer frightening. The fear of death stems from the illusion that there is a me being annihilated forever. But if we observe deeply, we'll see that me has never truly existed as an independent entity. It's a fabrication of the mind, born from our attachment to the body, sensations, names, and memories. When these elements break down, that self vanishes as well. And if we understand that the self is a construct, what is there to lose when death comes? A practitioner of the Dharma does not seek eternal life in the conventional sense. What they aim for is liberation from the cycle of birth and death, not by escaping death, but by seeing clearly that both birth and death are impermanent and selfless. With this insight rooted deeply, death is no longer a closing door, but a moment of transition, a gentle dissolution. Like a drop of dew disappearing into vast space. Importantly, birth and death don't just happen once in a lifetime. In every moment, we are being born and dying. Each thought that arises and fades is a small birth and death. Each inhalation is a beginning, and each exhalation is an ending. Life is not a straight line, but a series of constant arising and ceasing. And when we learn to live fully in each of those moments, we begin to glimpse the deeper flow of existence. When we no longer cling to the ideas of, I am alive, or I will die, something new arises, presence, a knowing that is unattached and undisturbed. In this state, life appears in its pure form, not colored by fear, not distorted by expectation. We can smile at birth, and bow to death, as two familiar guests taking turns to knock on our door. The Buddha once compared life to a river. A river never stops flowing and never holds the same shape. Water moves through here, then flows elsewhere. It doesn't disappear, it simply transforms. Our consciousness is like that too. It is not destroyed by death, but continues under new conditions, in a new form. What determines where we go is not someone else's judgment, but the very actions we have performed, the karma shaped by our wholesome or unwholesome intentions. So in every moment we live, we are paving the road ahead. The way we live today is the way we will die, and it is also the way we will continue, if there is to be another life. No one else can bear the fruits of our actions for us. But no one can stop us from transforming them either, if we are mindful enough, humble enough, and courageous enough to look deeply into ourselves. Every moment of life is precious and must not be wasted. If we truly understand that death could come at any time, we will live more deeply, more awake, more grateful, for every step we walk. Every gaze we share, every embrace we hold. In the end, what the Buddha sought to teach was not just a theory of birth and death, but a path beyond their bondage. That path isn't distant, it begins right here, in this very body and mind, in this very life. By looking deeply, by cultivating awareness, by practicing mindfulness, we can begin to dismantle the layers of ignorance that bind us. And when the light of insight shines through, the darkness of birth and death can no longer frighten us. That self is an illusion. What we call something that seems solid and undeniable is, in truth, merely an illusion formed from impermanent components. In the light of the Buddha's teachings, the self does not truly exist as a separate entity, but is instead a convenient label placed on the combination of 5 aggregates: form, the physical body, feeling, sensations, perception, mental formations, thoughts and volitions, and consciousness. These 5 aggregates are never static. They are constantly changing, shifting, assembling and dissolving moment by moment. Our body was once a child, then it grew, aged, and continues to change with every passing second. The feelings we had yesterday are not the same as today. Our thoughts from 1 hour ago are already different now. Every dream, emotion, and decision carries the mark of impermanence. Yet, in the midst of this flow, we continue to identify with a stable I like this, I hate that, I was hurt, I will become happy. But if we look deeply, we'll see, there's no real I behind those emotions and thoughts. They arise and vanish on their own, according to conditions, circumstances, and karmic energy. The thing we mistake as the one who is feeling is just a temporary coming together of these elements. And if everything that makes up the I is impermanent, how can that I be real? To see this is to begin letting go of self-clinging, the tendency to grasp at the illusion that there is a separate, permanent self existing independently in this universe. We realize that, like a bubble, a rainbow, or a beam of light, that self only exists when certain conditions are present. And it vanishes when those conditions are no longer there. Because we don't see this truth, we live in fear, struggle, and suffering. We go to great lengths to protect the self, saving face, winning arguments, proving our worth, accumulating, comparing. We fear loss, pain, and death, because we believe the self is real and under threat. But when wisdom shines through, and we realize that self is merely a mental construction, that fear dissolves. Because there is no one truly being harmed. There is nothing to defend, and nothing to fear. To someone who hasn't reflected deeply, this idea may feel unacceptable. How could I not exist? I'm clearly thinking and feeling right now. But if you observe more closely, you'll see that what you call I is just your awareness of a stream of experiences happening on their own. You are not the anger, because it comes and goes. You are not the thoughts, because they constantly change, and sometimes even contradict themselves. Even your body, which you've always claimed as mine, does not truly belong to you. You cannot command it not to age, not to fall ill, not to die. You cannot order your heart to beat slower or your blood to stop flowing. But if the guest believes they are the house, then every creak and shake will terrify them. This insight, though it may seem cold, is actually the path to the deepest freedom. When you stop clinging to a fixed self, you are no longer imprisoned by past wounds, ego battles, or regret. You become more open, light, and free. Because there's no you being offended. No you to defend, no you that needs to prove anything. That's why, in Zen meditation, people often ask, who is hearing this sound, who is breathing, when you are not thinking, who are you? These are not questions to be answered intellectually, but doorways into deep contemplation. When you sincerely search for the self, you'll find nothing, yet in that very nothing, a profound truth reveals itself, the truth of freedom. That self, as stated in the Diamond Sutra, is only a conventional name. The Buddha never denied that things appear to exist. But he warned us not to confuse appearances with ultimate reality. Just like we use the word wave to describe the rise and fall of water, but the wave does not exist separately from the ocean. The self is similar, a name for a set of conditions in motion, without any independent essence. Understanding this, we begin to live more deeply. We stop chasing the idealized self, a perfect person who is always right, always successful, always loved. We also stop being bound by the self of memory, full of pain, failure, or longing. We return to living in the present moment, no longer needing to be someone, no longer afraid of being no one. This is not avoidance, it is a clear, honest, and compassionate way of seeing. For when the self no longer controls us, we open naturally to others. Without measuring and comparing, we can listen to another's pain. Without feeling like the center of the world, we begin to live in deep connection with all beings. And strangely, it is precisely when we let go of the self that we discover our true nature, not confined to a body, a role, or a name. We become the river, the wind, the light, free, flowing, unbound. We live as part of the whole, and when we die, we disappear like a drop of dew merging into a cloud, not lost, but returning to the vast, boundless nature of existence. Karma leads the way after death. After the body dissolves, what remains is not a physical trace, but consciousness, which carries with it the imprints of karma. This stream of consciousness doesn't cease when the heart stops beating or the breath fades. Instead, it continues its journey, guided by the energy and direction created by one's actions, thoughts, and intentions. So where do you go after death? The answer is simple, yet profound: you go where your karma leads you. The place you will arrive tomorrow is built by what you think, say, and do today. Karma isn't just a distant cosmic law, it's the very fabric of our becoming. Every choice, every word, every thought sows a seed. And these seeds don't just disappear. They lie dormant, until the conditions are ripe, and then they manifest, sometimes in this life, sometimes in another. Just as a farmer cannot expect to harvest rice after planting thorns, we cannot expect peace and happiness in future lives if what we plant today is rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion. Likewise, wholesome actions, rooted in compassion, clarity, and generosity, ripen into lives filled with ease and understanding. The Buddha clearly said, "Beings are the owners of their karma. Karma is the womb, karma is the heritage, karma is the companion." This means that when everything else falls away, family, possessions, reputation, the only thing we truly take with us is our karma. It is both the vehicle and the destination. It's not punishment, nor reward. It's simply cause and effect playing out across lifetimes. Think of it like a traveler carrying a bag. What's in that bag is everything they've packed, heavy stones of resentment, or gentle flowers of loving kindness. After death, nothing else follows except that bag. And wherever the traveler goes next depends on what's inside it. The moment of death, then, is not a moment of annihilation, but a moment of transition. Like one chapter ending and another beginning. And the tone of the next chapter is largely influenced by how the previous one was lived. That's why mindfulness in daily life matters so deeply, not just for peace in this life, but for clarity in the next. This teaching isn't meant to instill fear, it's meant to awaken responsibility. In a world where so much feels uncertain, karma offers something steady: our actions matter. Not just to the world, but to our own journey through existence. Understanding this, we begin to see that death is not the real danger. The danger is living unconsciously, forgetting that every moment is an opportunity to shape our future. Imagine a painter who, unaware of what they're doing, smears dark paint on their canvas every day. When the picture is finally revealed, they may be shocked. But the picture was made stroke by stroke, moment by moment, just like our lives. And our rebirths. There's a deep compassion in the Buddha's teaching here. Because if our karma creates our future, then we are not victims of fate, we are the artists of our own becoming. We're not bound to a fixed destiny. Even if we've made mistakes, we can change course. Right now, in this very breath, with this very thought, the direction can shift. That's why spiritual practice isn't just a comfort, it's an act of transformation. Through meditation, mindfulness, and ethical living, we begin to purify the stream of karma. Like clearing a muddy river, our clarity grows, and our path becomes lighter, more luminous. When death comes, and it will, for all of us, what matters most is not how long we lived, but how we lived. Did we harm, or did we help? Did we awaken, or did we sleep through life? These are the silent questions that karma answers for us, not with words, but with consequences. The Buddha didn't teach karma to burden us, but to free us. To remind us that even in the face of death, we have agency. Even as everything falls away, something enduring remains, the direction of the heart, the echo of our intentions, the seeds we've sown. So if you wonder where you'll go after death, look closely at how you live today. Are you cultivating peace or conflict? Generosity or grasping? Wisdom or confusion? Each moment is a step, and every step leaves a footprint. When the final step of this life is taken, that footprint becomes the first step into what comes next. Live with awareness. Die with grace. Continue with purpose. Rebirth, not a mystery, but a logic. When people hear the word rebirth, many think of something mystical, hard to believe, like a legend or an ancient myth. But under the light of the Buddha's teachings, rebirth is not a vague concept. It is a logical process, rooted in cause and effect, flowing naturally from consciousness to existence. Imagine a tiny seed falling into the soil. It doesn't sprout immediately. But if the earth is moist enough, there's enough light, and the temperature is just right, then at some point, life will emerge from the ground, break through the shell. A mindful person understands this. Every action, every thought, no matter how small, is a seed planted in the stream of consciousness. When the right conditions arise, those seeds bear fruit. Some ripen in this lifetime, others wait in the next. Buddhism doesn't ask us to believe in rebirth as a blind faith. On the contrary, the Buddha taught us to observe our own mind, to look deeply into impermanence, dependent origination, and karmic law, and from that, see the logic of rebirth with our own insight. Take a newborn child. For example, some are born with extraordinary intelligence, a strange disposition, or unexplained talents. Others are born into suffering and misfortune that seem disconnected from anything in this life. Rebirth isn't the only explanation, but it is a convincing one through the lens of karma. Our current life is a continuation of a long chain of choices and actions, not necessarily within one single lifetime. Understanding rebirth, we stop blaming life. Because we know nothing is random. Everything is the result of causes. And because of that, we can live with more responsibility in the present, because the future comes from nothing other than what we do today. A student of the Dharma, once seeing clearly the truth of rebirth, won't live carelessly. They know that each moment of anger is a dark seed, each moment of kindness is a seed of light. No matter how chaotic the world becomes, our own karma remains within our power. And that is the true strength, knowing we are the ones paving the path we walk. Rebirth also deepens our compassion. Because if every being has, at some point in infinite lifetimes, been our parent, sibling, child, or friend, how could we truly hate anyone? Rebirth dissolves the line between me and others, because in this endless cycle of existence, we've all been intimately connected. And when we know that others, like us, carry karma, struggle through suffering, and seek peace, we become more patient, more forgiving, more loving. Rebirth is not just a philosophical idea. It is a reminder, no action is meaningless. No thought is without a trace. Every passing moment, we are writing the story of our rebirth, not with ink, but with how we live each day. Once you realize this, you stop living as if each day is guaranteed. You begin to see that each morning is a rare chance, to do good, to let go, to cultivate, to transform. But you always know who you are, right here, in this very moment. And only this moment is real enough to plant wholesome seeds, nurture a bright mind, and return to awareness. Rebirth, then, is not a vague prediction, it's a bell of mindfulness. It rings every time we feel like giving up, like being careless, like living without direction. It reminds us, everything has consequences. And we are the only ones who will walk the path we lay. So don't fear rebirth. Fear living without mindfulness. Because what determines your rebirth isn't fate, it's you. In every action and thought you choose right now. Escaping the cycle of samsara, something generations of practitioners have long yearned for, is not a gift granted by the gods. Nor something achieved through begging or rituals. In the Buddha's teachings, liberation doesn't come from blind faith but from deep understanding of the nature of the body, the mind, and all phenomena. No one can take you out of samsara if you haven't opened your own eyes. Like a sleepwalker lost in a maze, no one can lead them out if they are still dreaming. You have to wake up. And wisdom is the light that opens your eyes. The Buddha did not encourage us to run away from samsara by wishing to be reborn in heaven or reincarnated into a blessed human life. He taught that in any realm, heaven, the human world, or hell, all are still within the wheel of birth and death if they are ruled by ignorance, craving, and attachment. Wherever you're born, if your mind is still entangled in the self and driven by unpurified karma, you will continue to wander, just in different forms. So how do we end this endless cycle? First, see clearly. There is nothing in this world worth clinging to. Fame, beauty, power, emotions, all are impermanent, all arise and pass. As long as you chase after these things, you're caught in the spin of delusion. And clinging to them, you keep creating karma, through thoughts, speech, and actions, like a river endlessly flowing, carrying you from life to life. Second, you must observe yourself, each breath. But through direct insight from quiet observation. And from that, you begin to let go. Liberation is not escaping the world, but living in the world without being bound by it. It's not that you don't love, but that you love without clinging. It's not that you don't live, but that you live with awareness, not led by desire or fear. One who truly steps out of samsara is one who has completely ended all craving, no longer pulled by fame and form, no longer sees a self to protect, no longer desires anything for themselves. They no longer seek happiness in the future, because they clearly see, everything only exists in this present moment, and this moment, if seen with mindfulness, is nirvana itself. They no longer fear death, because they've already died from all illusions. And they no longer wish to be reborn, because there's nothing left to continue. When causes cease, effects can no longer arise. When delusions end, the mind is no longer driven into rebirth. This is the ultimate stillness, nowhere to go, nothing to become. However, you cannot reach that state by merely praying. No one can grant you liberation, not even the Buddha. He is only the guide. And that path, the Noble Eightfold Path, cannot be walked with blind faith. But only with each mindful step, each conscious action, each choice to let go. Liberation is not for those who want to avoid suffering, but for those who have the courage to look directly at it. Walk through it, and see the empty nature of all phenomena. In that moment, suffering is no longer suffering, it's just a quiet wave passing through, unable to touch you. And, you, are no longer, you, no image left to protect, no identity to affirm. Only presence remains, still, free, vast as space. That is true freedom, no longer bound by birth and death. With nowhere to go, and nothing left to return to. Because the only place you ever needed to reach, you are already there, in the moment you awaken. Enlightenment, true freedom. The enlightened one is no longer dragged by the wheel of karma. No longer clinging through desire, no longer pushed by anger, no longer veiled by ignorance. They have gone beyond all the undercurrents of the mind, where most beings still drift without knowing the way out. When the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he did not become a god but a human being who had completely let go of all bondage. Enlightenment is not a mystical state to be worshipped but a truth that can be realized through wisdom. It is the deep understanding at the root, that all phenomena are impermanent, every sense of self is an illusion, and every attachment is the source of suffering. Nirvana is not some faraway heaven or a realm after death. Nirvana is the extinguishing of the fire of greed, hatred, and delusion. When these three flames go out, the mind becomes clear. Light, no longer pulled in any direction by life. A person who has attained nirvana still lives, still breathes, still engages with the world, but is no longer bound by it. True freedom does not come from avoiding suffering but from facing it, seeing its nature, and no longer letting it dominate the mind. The enlightened do not need to escape birth and death. The Buddha taught that enlightenment is not reserved for a gifted few. Anyone can reach it, if they are willing to turn inward, observe the self deeply, release the illusion of identity, and live each moment mindfully. Ordinary people live by reaction. Whatever feels pleasant, they cling to; whatever feels unpleasant, they reject. This cycle feeds suffering. But the practitioner sees that sensations are just sensations, thoughts are just thoughts, the body is just the body, all impermanent, with no me or mine in any of it. Seeing this clearly, the mind is no longer pulled along. The more one practices, the more one sees there is nothing to practice. The more one learns, the more one sees there is nothing to learn. Fame. The enlightened turn inward and realize, these things are just bubbles floating on the surface. They do not deny the value of life, but they no longer mistake it as the source of true happiness. They still live in the world, but their hearts are unattached. True freedom means not being controlled by any condition. It's not the absence of emotions, but the absence of being ruled by them. It's not the absence of thoughts, but the absence of identification with them. When the mind is no longer entangled in anything, that is when it becomes vast like the sky, able to contain all things without being caught by any of them. A Zen master once said, "Before enlightenment, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers." During the path, mountains are no longer mountains, rivers are no longer rivers. After enlightenment, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers again. The enlightened don't abandon life, they live fully within it. But with eyes that have been cleared of dust. They see through all things but no longer try to change them. Their actions arise from wisdom and compassion, not ambition or fear. To be enlightened is not to become superhuman, but to return to what is most ordinary, with entirely new eyes. A cup of tea, a gust of wind, a single step, each becomes the Dharma. Each becomes a gate to liberation, if seen with a still mind. When you are enlightened, you no longer need the concept of enlightenment. You need no titles, no recognition, no comparisons. You simply exist, free, grounded, like a mountain unmoved by the storms of the world. And the most wondrous thing is this, that freedom has always been here, right now, never once leaving you. It is the silence after each thought, the space between each breath, the pure, nameless aliveness. That is true freedom. That is enlightenment. But to live like that, it's not something everyone is ready for. Most people live as if they will never die. They rush to build a life upon impermanent foundations, stable jobs, prestige, relationships, dreams about the future. No matter how beautiful those things appear, they all fall under the law of arising, sustaining, changing, vanishing. Nothing stands still. And nothing is guaranteed to belong to us forever. We forget that each morning we wake up, with breath still flowing and body still intact, is a gift, one no one can truly count on. And because we forget, we waste it. We waste time on resentment, comparison, and competition. We waste energy resisting reality and chasing after things that were never really ours. We fear death. But we don't truly live. Death is not some distant concept. It's present in every shifting moment of the body and mind. Every exhale is a small letting go. Every thought that arises and dissolves is a tiny death in consciousness. But if we don't pause to look deeply, we won't see it. And because we don't see, we're carried away by unconscious currents, by reactivity, craving, and attachment. The Buddha called this ignorance, not seeing things as they truly are. From ignorance arises craving. From craving comes karma. And karma leads to rebirth. That cycle repeats endlessly, trapping us in the wheel of samsara. But here's the wonder, if in this very life, we pause, awaken, and see clearly the impermanence and selfless nature of all things, that cycle can be broken. Right here in this body, in this very mind, is the doorway to liberation, not something to be postponed to a future lifetime. That doesn't happen through intellectual understanding, but through direct experience. When we sit still, in silence, we can observe each sensation arising and passing away. The anger that once seemed like me turns out to be nothing but a passing wave. Thoughts of joy, sorrow, success, and failure, just clouds drifting across the sky of the mind. In that moment, you no longer try to become anything. You simply are. And in that state, free from striving, resistance, or clinging, you may sense a quiet peace rising from within. Not a fleeting happiness, but a grounded stillness, untouched by external change. A stable presence in the midst of impermanence. And begin with, I must transform myself. And from there, you'll realize, we don't live to run away from death, but to understand it. No longer afraid. You can walk steadily between birth and death, knowing that death is not the enemy, it's a natural part of life. Like night follows day, like autumn follows summer. Death is just a transition, not an end, but a turning point shaped by the law of cause and effect. And when you see this clearly, you'll know, we live to transform our karma, not through prayer alone, but through daily practice. Every action you take, every thought you nurture, plants a seed in the stream of your consciousness. Whether that seed is compassion or anger, wisdom or delusion, it's entirely up to you. You no longer blame karma, but learn how to transform it. No longer pointing fingers at circumstances, you begin refining your own mind. You begin to see that each day is a sacred opportunity, not to possess, not to prove your worth, but to release what no longer serves you. Letting go of fear. Letting go of control. Letting go of the idea that, I must become someone. You live like a gardener. Caring with quiet effort. Planting seeds gently. Not demanding flowers to bloom on your schedule. Not rushing the harvest. Simply living, tending, and releasing. And in doing so, living mindfully, deeply, with gratitude, you begin to discover your true nature. A nature not bound by identity, achievement, or history. A nature unborn and undying, like the sun, always shining behind the clouds. You begin to live not for goals set by society, but because awareness itself is the reward. You don't need to travel far in search of enlightenment, because you realize, everything is already here, unfolding in this very moment, if you're still enough to see it. Where did you come from? Where will you go after death? The answer doesn't lie out there somewhere, but within each breath, in every moment of mindful living today. We don't ask these questions to get intellectual answers, but to knock gently on the doors of our own hearts. Where we came from isn't about a place, it's a reminder, where does this consciousness come from? What gives rise to this body? And when we die, where do we go? That's not something to fear, but something to contemplate. What does my mind carry? What karma remains unresolved? What has been let go? But no one can answer these for us. No religion, no scholar, no teacher can walk this path for you with mere words. Only you, with your own awakened eyes, with your own brave heart, can discover it. Not in the future. Not in another lifetime. But right here and now, where you breathe, where you feel, where you live. In every inhale and exhale, if you're still enough, you'll sense something shifting. Not the world outside, but the inner space within. There, you realize you're no longer a seeker, but a witness. You're no longer running from life or death, but resting peacefully in the truth of both. And in that space, the question slowly dissolves, not because you've failed to find an answer, but because you've gone beyond needing one. You begin to see. No one truly comes from anywhere. No one truly goes anywhere. Only Dharma flows, arising, ceasing, and arising again, like waves in a vast, endless ocean. And you are that ocean, unborn, undying, vast and serene. All the things you once believed to be you, your feelings, memories, images, fears, were just passing waves. So, why do we live? To return to the truth. To live without regret. Not like a leaf blown by the winds of life, but like a tree, rooted in presence, grounded in wisdom and compassion. You live to truly see yourself, not that the self society defines, but the spacious essence already within you. You live to wake up, not to chase fleeting success or happiness. And in that awakening, you finally become free. Not free in the political or material sense, but free from the traps of the mind. No longer stuck in the past. No longer anxious about the future. No longer driven by anger, envy, or endless craving. You live to shed layers of delusion, like old garments, until all that remains is the pure light of mindfulness. The path isn't easy. But it's not far either. You don't need to become someone else. Simply observe, and you'll see each moment is a doorway into truth. And one day, perhaps while sipping tea, or sitting quietly on a silent afternoon, you'll realize there's nothing more to seek. Every mindful step. If you've journeyed this far, you are no longer just a listener, but a being awakening. And if something here touched your heart, even just a spark, let it ripple outward. You don't have to preach. Just live a little more deeply, breathe a little more slowly, and listen a little more gently. You, and only you, are the lamp that lights your way. And if you'd like to keep walking this path of Buddhist wisdom with us, please subscribe to the channel. Not just to follow another video, but to nourish the seed of mindfulness within you, day by day, breath by breath. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. For being still. For looking within.